Today we're going to look at one of the strongest people to touch a barbell, and that is John Haack. There's a lot of great things we could look at in John Haack's lifts, but let's stick with his squat for the purpose of this series. For a long time, the biggest squats were done by lifters with a low bar squat position, a very vertical shin angle, and these were often by lifters who were in excess of 120 kilos body weight. Think Eric Bridge, Shane Hammond, and Stan Efferding. Modern day lifting has slowly made way for a different breed of powerlifters. Today's lifters are certainly still large and in charge, but we see many great powerlifters moving a different way. These modern day lifters have slowly changed the typical squat style that we see setting big records. What we used to see with the behemoths of the past were large amounts of external rotation of the knees and a desire to keep the shin angle quite vertical, while the hips were sent in a very distinct rearward direction to break parallel. Now around the same time we had our weightlifters who were setting huge lifts with the opposite technique. Very high bar, aggressive forward knee drive and hips moving in a vertical line. I always think of Alberto Aranda squatting incredible weights when I think of this style of squatting. Now today though, we're seeing a lot of modern powerlifters using a somewhat hybrid approach to squat, and as the series progresses we'll delve into this more and see what you can learn from it. But today we're going to look at John Haack, who is a high bar powerlifter squatting near quadruple body weight in competition. John has squatted 355 kilos in competition, weighing 92.8 kilos, an incredible lift, and even more unusual is the fact that he does this using a high bar squat. So let's take a look at the hallmarks of John Haack's squat that many of you can successfully use in your squat training to maximize your squatting potential. The defining point of John Haack's squat is the degree of forward knee travel we see him use. With knees forward over our toes, we're getting maximum use of our knee extensors, which are primarily our quads. When we drive our knees over our toes from the beginning of the squat, this allows us to maintain the most upright back angle possible. This is beneficial to the average lifter as your anterior muscles, in conjunction with your ass, can move some heavy loads. If we watch John Haack begin the squat, he begins by driving his knees forward and keeps driving them forward as he reaches depth and oftentimes quite deeper in training. To accompany this forward knee travel, John has a relatively straightforward toe position in his squat stance. As we've talked about before, this requires a large amount of dorsiflexion from the ankle, but when used for the appropriate person, it does however allow us to use our legs in an incredibly powerful fashion in the squat. Generally what happens when a lifter squats with toes straight ahead and exclusively forward knee travel, we generally end up with rounding of the upper or lower back if the lifter does not possess adequate upper back flexibility and or strength. What generally works best for most lifters is a slight turn out of the toes, and if they're trying to maximize their squat 1RM, a moderate low bar position provides the best of both worlds. With this low bar position and aggressive forward knee travel, the lifter is not required to have a highly capable level of dorsiflexion due to the slightly tilted forward torso. We can then drive our knees forward, but with a rearward movement of the hips, we end up hitting depth, but we still use our quads to a great degree while also keeping a consistent back angle. John, on the other hand, is an absolute horse. He possesses a secret weapon that allows him to rely on his quad drive, and that is an upper body made of potentially granite or some other tough material like, for example, adamantium or unobtainium. In particular of the upper body, we need to be concerned with how strong our back musculature is. This is generally broken down into two sections, our lower back strength and our upper back strength. The brunt of lower back strength is often taken by deadlifts, especially if you're a powerlifter or a weightlifter. But if you want to further the lower back training, you can focus on lifts such as back extensions, weighted back extensions, done on a GHD or 45-degree back extension. Sometimes good mornings are very useful, and then prone back extensions on the floor. Now when it comes to upper back, the world is our proverbial oyster. We recommend training your upper back with as many variations as you can fit in your training. This might look like seal rows on a bench with dumbbells or barbells, or a personal favorite of mine, seated horizontal cable rows. If we look at the vertical pulling motions, we can look at weighted pull-ups or lat pull-downs. The main thing is to try push all these for both volume and weight. If you smash your upper back for the next training cycle, I promise you, by the end of it, you will be able to use your legs even better than before. To further maximize John's use of his lower body, he uses a raised heel shoe to squat. Now, I know there's many of you listening to this saying, guys, I already squat in weightlifting shoes, but I know there's just as many listening who don't, and they're not sure if they need one. What often happens is people say, oh, do I really need one? And as soon as they do their first squat session in their new weightlifting shoes, they end up seeing the light and never going back. Now, you can have a perfectly useful squat in normal flat shoes or barefoot, but we get some added benefits when we're squatting in weightlifting shoes. First of all, the raised heel allows us to more easily push our knees forward. It essentially adds some artificial dorsiflexion. So if you're one of the lifters who struggles with achieving consistent and improved ankle range of motion, try a weightlifting shoe with a moderate heel lift. This can range from 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, all the way up to a 1 inch. Depending on your squat style, you might not necessarily need the full 1 inch. The second additional benefit to a good weightlifting shoe is the force transfer we get when we squat in a hard sole shoe. This is much better than a soft or pliable sole shoe like a runner or a Converse, for example. Our body is incredibly intuitive and very effective at dampening or increasing force depending on the environment we're in. If the squatting environment immediately underfoot is a soft and unstable surface, the amount of force output is dampened to ensure we don't hurt ourselves. The opposite is also true. If we squat on a surface that is very rigid, our body detects this, decides we're in a safe environment, and puts us in a much better position to put out force. Couple this with the raised heel of the weightlifting shoe, you get a lot of benefits that you get over other shoes when you're squatting. So again, when looking for shoes to squat in, you definitely don't need the most expensive weightlifting shoe or with the highest heel possible. You just need a shoe that has a very solid sole and then an appropriate lift for you. If you're a very short lifter with a huge amount of dorsiflexion, you don't necessarily need the 1 inch. And conversely, if you're a very tall lifter with limited dorsiflexion, a smaller lift in the shoe might not necessarily be the best option for you. Generally, Adidas and Reebok currently make some of the most affordable and consistent shoes for squatting, so I'd recommend having a look there first. I hope you enjoyed today's video and I hope you're enjoying this series. We're certainly enjoying making it. If you have any suggestions for lifters you'd like to see next, and I'm more than happy to get to those. So last week someone suggested John Haack and we zoomed in on that. Now, we'll be looking at different areas next week, but let us know in the comments below. Today's video is brought to you by the Road to Anywhere Squat program. It is 8 weeks in length, 2 sessions per week, and includes your squatting and your assistance work. It's very tough, so I recommend you use an appropriate 1RM squat that represents your abilities right now, but it is very productive.